I skipped my dream job to stay home with his mom, but at the family barbecue he announced our divorce with a toast. "She's been a great temp," his sister laughed. I clinked my glass, then handed him a package that destroyed his career. The call came at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. I remember the exact time because I was staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep after another one of Taylor's emergency work meetings that ran until midnight. His phone buzzed against the nightstand and I watched him fumble for it in the darkness. "Mom fell again," he whispered, his voice thick with panic. "She's in the hospital." I was already reaching for my robe before he finished the sentence. That's who I was then, the woman who moved first, questioned later. The woman who believed that love meant sacrifice and sacrifice meant silence. Before we dive deeper into how I plan my perfect revenge, I want to thank you for being here. If you believe that sacrifice and loyalty deserve better than betrayal, please consider subscribing. It's free and helps us reach more women who need to hear this. Now let's see how this unfolds. The hospital smelled like disinfectant and broken dreams. Taylor's mother, Eleanor, lay in the sterile bed looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Her hip was fractured, but the real damage was deeper. The doctor's gentle explanation about early-stage dementia, about how living alone was no longer safe. "I can't do this," Taylor said, running his hands through his hair as we sat in the waiting room. "The promotion at work, the new project launches. I can't be her caregiver." I reached for his hand, my fingers interlacing with his. "We'll figure it out." "Alex, I can't ask you to." "You're not asking," I interrupted. "I'm offering." The words left my mouth before I could stop them. My architecture firm had just offered me the lead position on their biggest residential project. A sustainable housing development that would have launched my career into the stratosphere. The interview was in 3 days. I'd been preparing for months. But Taylor's eyes were desperate and I'd been raised to believe that family came first. Even when that family wasn't technically mine yet. "Just temporarily," I said, convincing myself as much as him. "Until we find a good care facility or a professional nurse." Temporarily. The word tasted like copper in my mouth now, 3 years later. The first month was manageable. Eleanor was recovering from surgery, and I could work from home on smaller projects while helping with her physical therapy. I made her favorite soup, organized her medications, and drove her to appointments. She called me Taylor's friend most days, but sometimes she'd smile and say, "Thank you, dear." Those small moments of gratitude felt like victories. But as weeks melted into months, my laptop gathered dust. Client calls went unanswered. The architecture firm hired someone else for the lead position. Someone who could commit, they said. Someone who wasn't playing house with their boyfriend's mother. Taylor's work demands increased. He'd leave early, come home late, and spend weekends catching up at the office. I understood. His promotion was important. We needed the money, especially now that I wasn't contributing financially. "You're amazing," he'd tell me, kissing my forehead before rushing out the door. "I don't know what we'd do without you." I lived on those words like they were oxygen. The changes in him were subtle at first. He'd check his phone during dinner, smiling at messages I couldn't see. His work trips became more frequent. Conferences in cities I'd never heard him mention before. When I asked about them, he'd give vague answers about client meetings and networking opportunities. "You're being paranoid," he said one evening when I mentioned how distant he seemed. "I'm working my butt off for our future. Can't you just support me instead of making everything about you?" The accusation stung because it felt partially true. I was making it about me. About the loneliness that crept in during the long days spent managing Eleanor's care. About the dreams I'd shelved without any clear timeline for when I might dust them off. His family gatherings became exercises in endurance. Taylor's sister, Michelle, would arrive with her perfect manicure and designer handbags, making passive-aggressive comments about how convenient it was that I was available to help. "It's like having a live-in nurse," she'd laugh to Taylor. "Except you don't have to pay her." Eleanor would nod along, sometimes forgetting I was in the room. "Taylor's friend is very helpful," she'd say to Michelle. Though I can't remember her name most days. "It's Alex," I'd say quietly. "Alex, right? She's like a temporary helper." Temporary. That word again. Taylor never corrected them. He'd laugh uncomfortably and change the subject, but he never stood up for me. Never acknowledged that I'd put my entire career on hold. Never mentioned that I was his girlfriend of 4 years, not just some random woman who'd wandered into their lives. The breaking point came on a Thursday night in November. I was folding Taylor's laundry, a task that had somehow become mine along with everything else, when I heard him on the phone in the kitchen. "She's useful for now," his voice carried through the thin walls. "But honestly, I don't know how much longer I can keep this up." I stood frozen, a half-folded shirt in my hands. The fabric felt rough against my suddenly numb fingers. I know," he continued. "But the situation at home is complicated. She's been handling everything with Mom and I can't just, well, you understand." There was a pause. Then laughter. Taylor's laughter. "Trust me, I'm working on it." The shirt fell to the floor. I bent to pick it up, my movements mechanical, robotic. Something fundamental had shifted inside me, not broken but hardened. Like water turning to ice. I didn't confront him. Instead, I finished the laundry in silence, folded it perfectly and put it away. Then I sat at the kitchen table with a notebook and started writing. November 15th. Taylor on phone, unknown caller, 9:47 p.m. "She's useful for now." The ink looked so ordinary on the page. Just blue lines forming letters, forming words, forming the beginning of the end. I wasn't planning revenge yet. I was planning survival. Because for the first time in 3 years, I realized I'd been living in someone else's story, playing a character I'd never auditioned for. The temporary helper. The useful woman. But useful things, I realized, could be replaced. And temporary things eventually came to an end. Grace's name first floated into our conversations like smoke. Subtle, almost invisible, but impossible to ignore once you noticed it. Taylor would mention her casually over dinner, his fork pausing midair as he'd say, "Grace thinks we should restructure the quarterly reports," or, "Grace has this incredible strategy for client retention." At first I found it endearing. My boyfriend had found a mentor, someone who believed in his potential. Grace Martinez. I learned her full name from Taylor's enthusiastic recounting of her career trajectory. She'd built her consulting firm from nothing, worked 18-hour days, and commanded respect in rooms full of men who'd tried to diminish her. "She's like a machine," Taylor would say, his eyes lighting up in a way that should have been my first warning. "Her mind works 3 steps ahead of everyone else's." I remember telling him how much I'd love to meet her someday. "She sounds incredible. Maybe we could have dinner." Taylor's smile flickered. "She's super busy. Plus work stuff, you know? It might be weird." Weird. The word hung in the air between us, but I let it slide. I was too busy managing Eleanor's medication schedule and physical therapy appointments to dig deeper into what weird might mean. Grace's influence on Taylor became more pronounced as months passed. He'd quote her philosophy on work-life balance. Ironic, considering I hadn't seen him maintain any balance in months. He'd reference her opinions on everything from investment strategies to vacation destinations. "Grace says couples who travel together grow together," he mentioned one evening while scrolling through his phone. She and her ex used to take these amazing trips before things fell apart. Her ex. Even her failed relationships seemed fascinating to him. The day I decided to surprise Taylor with lunch at his office, I'd spent the morning making his favorite sandwich, turkey and avocado on sourdough with that expensive mustard he loved. Eleanor had been particularly difficult that morning, refusing her medication and insisting she didn't need help getting dressed. By the time I'd gotten her settled with her afternoon soap opera, I needed to see Taylor smile, needed to feel appreciated for something. The elevator ride to the 15th floor felt longer than usual. I checked my reflection in the polished doors, smoothing down my hair and adjusting the lunch bag. When had I started caring so much about my appearance for a simple lunch delivery? Taylor's office had glass walls, a modern design choice that was supposed to promote transparency and collaboration. The irony wasn't lost on me later. I saw them before they saw me. Taylor sat behind his desk, but his chair was angled toward the woman perched on the edge of his desk. She wore a burgundy blazer that probably cost more than I spent on groceries in a month, her dark hair pulled back in a perfect chignon. Her laugh was musical, genuine, the kind that made you want to be part of whatever joke had caused it. But it wasn't the laughter that stopped me cold. It was Taylor's hand resting over hers on the desk, his thumb tracing small circles on her knuckles. I knocked on the glass door, watching as they both turned. Taylor's hand jerked away from hers like he'd been burned. "Alex." His voice pitched higher than normal. What are you doing here? The woman, Grace obviously, slid gracefully from the desk, extending her hand toward me with practiced professionalism. You must be Alex. I've heard so much about you. Her handshake was firm, confident. Her eyes were the color of dark chocolate, warm and intelligent. She was beautiful in an effortless way that made me acutely aware of my own hastily applied mascara and the small stain on my sweater from Eleanor's breakfast. I brought lunch, I said, holding up the bag like a peace offering. How thoughtful, Grace said, and I couldn't detect any sarcasm in her tone. Taylor's lucky to have someone who takes such good care of him. The phrase felt loaded with meaning I couldn't quite grasp. 2 weeks later, a package arrived at our house. My name was on the label, written in elegant script that belonged to someone who'd learned proper penmanship. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was a bottle of perfume, Chanel No. 5, the classic. The card was simple: thanks for supporting Taylor's grind. Grace. I held the bottle up to the light, watching the amber liquid catch the afternoon sun streaming through our kitchen window. It was thoughtful, expensive, completely inappropriate. But what made my hands shake wasn't the gift itself. It was the scent that wafted up when I removed the cap. I'd smelled it before, lingering on Taylor's coat collar after his late nights at the office. I'd assumed it was from a client meeting, maybe dinner at an upscale restaurant. I set the bottle on the counter and stared at it for a long time. Then I put it in the drawer with the other things I was beginning to collect. Receipts, notes, small inconsistencies that meant nothing individually but formed a pattern when viewed together. That night I opened Taylor's laptop while he showered. His password was still the same, my birthday, which felt like both a comfort and a betrayal. His calendar was synced across all his devices, and Grace's name appeared with startling frequency. Coffee meetings, strategy sessions, dinner consultations that ran well past business hours. I took screenshots. Not because I was ready to confront anything, but because I needed proof that I wasn't losing my mind. The Bluetooth logs on his phone told an even more interesting story. Grace's car had been connected to his phone's system 17 times in the past month. Long drives together, apparently. Places I'd never been mentioned when he recounted his workdays. I learned to navigate his digital life like a forensic accountant, following the paper trail of a relationship I wasn't supposed to know existed. Credit card statements showed charges at restaurants I'd never heard of, hotels in cities where he'd supposedly had solo business trips. The private investigator's name was Marcus, and he specialized in what he called domestic intelligence gathering. His office was in a nondescript building downtown, and he had the kind of forgettable face that probably served him well in his line of work. I need to know what my boyfriend is doing, I told him, sliding a folder across his desk. These are his patterns, his schedule, his habits. Marcus flipped through my notes with professional interest. You've done impressive groundwork. Most people come to me with just suspicions. I don't deal in suspicions anymore. He quoted me a price that made me wince, but I had money saved from before. Back when I'd had a career, back when I'd planned for a future that included my own financial independence. 3 weeks later, Marcus called. I have what you need. The video was time-stamped 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. Hotel elevator security footage, grainy but clear enough. Taylor and Grace stepped into the elevator together, maintaining professional distance for exactly 4 seconds. Then her hand was on his chest, his mouth was on hers, and they were kissing with the desperate intensity of people who'd been waiting all day for that moment. I watched it 3 times. On the 3rd viewing, I realized I was smiling. Not because I was happy, but because finally, I had confirmation that I wasn't crazy. That the woman who'd sent me perfume as a thank you gift had been marking her territory all along. That the woman behind the curtain wasn't just pulling strings in Taylor's career. She was pulling him away from me. The smile that had been my companion for weeks never wavered as I watched the security footage one final time. That night, I began planning with the precision of an architect designing a cathedral. Every beam calculated, every angle measured, every potential stress point reinforced. When Taylor burst through the front door 3 days later, practically vibrating with excitement, I was seasoning chicken for dinner. Babe, I got the promotion. He swept me into a hug that lifted my feet off the ground. Senior Vice President. Can you believe it? I let myself be spun around, laughing in all the right places. That's incredible. I'm so proud of you. We should celebrate. Big time. His eyes were bright with success and something else. Relief, maybe. What do you think about hosting a barbecue? This weekend? Get the whole family together. Perfect. The words sang in my mind, but I kept my expression appropriately surprised. This weekend? That's pretty short notice. Come on, you're amazing at this stuff. Besides, it's not like you have anything else going on. The casual cruelty of that statement should have stung, but I'd moved beyond pain. I was operating in a different emotional territory now, one where his words were just data points in my growing file. Of course, I said, reaching up to kiss his cheek. I'll make it perfect. And I would. I spent the next 48 hours in a state of controlled creativity. The guest list was easy. Taylor's parents, his sister Michelle and her husband, a few colleagues from work. And Grace, naturally. She'd been included in family events with increasing frequency, her presence normalized to the point where no one questioned it anymore. The seating arrangement took careful consideration. I placed Grace directly across from Taylor, where she could see his face clearly. Michelle and her husband flanked Taylor's parents, positioned to witness everything. I assigned myself the chair closest to the house, close enough to make my strategic exit when needed. The menu was Taylor's favorites. Grilled chicken with my special marinade, corn salad, those little potatoes he loved. I even made his mother's famous chocolate cake, though she'd never actually taught me the recipe. I'd figured it out through trial and error during the early days of our relationship, back when I'd still believed effort equaled love. The black envelope waited in the kitchen drawer like a loaded weapon. I'd assembled its contents with the methodical care of a prosecutor building a case. Marcus had provided everything: photographs, audio recordings, financial documents, location data. But the real treasure was something I'd discovered myself. While reviewing the audio files, I'd caught something Marcus had missed. In the background of one recording, Taylor's voice discussing more than just their affair. He was talking numbers, account transfers, ways to clean up the books before the quarterly audit. Grace's embezzlement wasn't a solo operation. It was a duet. I'd spent my own money to verify the financial irregularities, hiring a forensic accountant who confirmed what the recordings suggested. Grace had been siphoning funds from client accounts, and Taylor had been helping her cover the digital trail. Saturday arrived with perfect weather, clear skies, gentle breeze, the kind of day that made you believe in new beginnings. I woke before dawn, not from anxiety but from anticipation. Today was the day I reclaimed my narrative. The guests arrived in predictable order. Taylor's parents first, punctual and formal. Michelle and her husband next, bearing expensive wine and air kisses. The colleagues trickled in throughout the afternoon, men in polo shirts and women in sundresses, all eager to celebrate Taylor's success. Grace arrived last, carrying a bottle of champagne and wearing a yellow dress that made her look like sunshine. She hugged me with apparent warmth, whispering, "Thank you for including me. I know family events are special." "You're practically family," I replied, and meant it in ways she couldn't imagine. The afternoon unfolded like a perfectly orchestrated performance. I played the gracious hostess, ensuring drinks stayed full and conversation flowed. Taylor basked in congratulations, his hand finding Grace's shoulder or arm with increasing frequency. Their touches were brief, professional, but I knew what to look for now. Eleanor, Taylor's mother, was having one of her clearer days. She complimented the food, remembered most names, and even asked about my little architecture hobby. I smiled and deflected the way I'd learned to do. As the sun began to set, Taylor stood up, raising his beer bottle. "I want to say something." The conversations quieted, faces turning expectantly toward him. He looked confident, comfortable, a man who'd finally gotten everything he wanted. "This year has been incredible," he began, his voice carrying across the patio. "The promotion, the new opportunities, the chance to work with amazing people." His eyes found Grace's, lingering just a moment too long. "It's taught me what I really need in life." I felt my pulse steady, my breathing calm. "Here it comes." And unfortunately, Taylor's smile turned apologetic, his gaze finally landing on me. "Alex, you're not it." The words hung in the air like smoke from the grill. Michelle's sharp intake of breath was audible. Eleanor's face crumpled in confusion. Grace's expression remained carefully neutral, but I caught the slight upturn of her lips. "I think it's time we both moved on," Taylor continued, his voice gaining strength. "You've been great, really. But I need a partner who understands ambition, who can match my energy. Michelle's laugh was the sound of breaking glass. About time someone said it. She's been like a temporary nurse around here anyway. Very temporary, Eleanor added, her voice carrying the casual cruelty that old age sometimes permits. I stood up slowly, my wine glass catching the last rays of sunlight. The moment stretched, everyone waiting for tears, for anger, for the scene they expected. That I smiled. You're absolutely right, Taylor. I raised my glass in a mock toast. To new beginnings. The clink of glass against glass was delicate, almost musical. Then I reached into my pocket and withdrew the black envelope. Before we celebrate too much, I said, my voice carrying across the suddenly quiet patio, you'll want to open this. Taylor's confidence flickered. What is it? Consider it a going-away present. He took the envelope with hands that weren't quite steady. As he opened it, I pulled out my phone, scrolling to the audio file I'd queued up hours ago. The first photograph made his face go pale. The second made his hands shake. By the time he reached the financial documents, his breathing had become shallow and rapid. Alex, where did you get this? I pressed play on my phone, turning the volume up high. Grace's voice filled the evening air, breathy and intimate. Taylor, yes, oh God, yes. Michelle's wine glass hit the patio stones with a sharp crack. Eleanor's fork clattered against her plate. The colleagues exchanged glances, some reaching for their phones. But the audio file wasn't finished. Grace's voice faded, replaced by Taylor's own words. We need to move the Henderson account funds by Thursday. Can you adjust the timestamp on the transfer? Make it look like it happened last month. The silence that followed was deafening. Grace's face had gone ashen, her champagne bottle forgotten on the table. The affair was almost disappointing, I said conversationally, as if discussing the weather. But the embezzlement? That was truly creative. Taylor's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Grace started to stand, but I held up my hand. I wouldn't leave just yet. The police should be here soon. Taylor's mouth moved like a fish gasping for air, but no coherent words emerged. Just fragments. Alex, you don't understand, and this isn't what it looks like, and we can work this out. I watched him with the detached fascination of someone observing an animal at the zoo. The man who'd dismissed my concerns as paranoia, who'd called me clingy for asking simple questions, was now drowning in his own panic. How long have you been recording us? Grace's voice cut through Taylor's stammering, sharp and controlled despite the circumstances. Long enough, I replied, my finger hovering over my phone screen. Actually, let me check my messages. I sent a few texts while you were both having your little moment. The first text had gone to David Martinez, Grace's business partner and the company's chief financial officer. The message was simple. You need to see this. Emergency. Grace has been stealing. Attached were 3 of the most damning audio files. The second text went to Detective Sarah Chin, whom I'd met through Marcus. She specialized in white-collar crime and had been very interested in the evidence I'd gathered. It's happening now. 1247 Maple Street. Both suspects present. Taylor's face went from pale to gray. You called the police? I called the appropriate authorities, I corrected. There's a difference. Michelle finally found her voice, though it came out as a strangled whisper. Alex, what the hell is going on? Taylor's been helping his girlfriends steal money from their clients, I explained conversationally. Oh, and they've been sleeping together for months. In case that wasn't clear from the audio. Grace stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the patio stones. This is entrapment. You can't record private conversations without consent. I smiled, pulling out another document from the envelope. Actually, I can. Single-party consent state. I was present for most of these recordings. The ones I wasn't present for? Well, those were obtained through legal surveillance methods by a licensed private investigator. Her confidence cracked slightly. You're bluffing. Am I? I held up my phone again. Would you like me to play the recording from last Tuesday? The one where you specifically mention moving money, with Taylor's help, to avoid the audit. Grace's carefully constructed composure finally shattered. This is a trap. You manipulated this entire situation. I planned it, I agreed. There's a difference between manipulation and preparation. You two gave me plenty of material to work with. Taylor's father, who'd been silent throughout the revelations, cleared his throat. "Son, is this true?" "Dad, I can explain." "Is it true?" The older man's voice carried decades of authority, the tone he'd probably used when Taylor was a child caught lying about broken windows or stolen cookies. Taylor's shoulders sagged. "It's complicated." "It's really not," I interjected. "Grace steals money. Taylor helps her hide it. They sleep together." The end. Eleanor, who'd been staring at her plate throughout the chaos, finally looked up. Her expression was lucid, focused in a way I hadn't seen in months. "Why would you do this at a family gathering?" The question hung in the air, and for a moment, I felt the weight of every sacrifice I'd made, every dismissive comment I'd endured, every time I'd been treated as invisible. "Because you all treated me like hired help," I said, my voice steady. "For 3 years I put my career on hold to take care of you, Eleanor. I drove you to appointments, managed your medications, cooked your meals, and listened to you forget my name week after week." I reached into my purse and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "Michelle, you called me a temporary helper, and joked about getting free nursing care. Taylor, you told me I had nothing else going on when I questioned your late nights." The paper made a crisp sound as I unfolded it. "So here's my resignation letter, along with an itemized bill for 3 years of unpaid caregiving services." Eleanor took the paper with shaking hands. Her eyes widened as she scanned the numbers. $37,000? "That's below market rate for live-in care," I said. I was generous. Taylor lurched forward. "Alex, you can't be serious. We're family." "No," I said firmly. "We were never family. I was convenient. I was useful. I was temporary." The sound of car doors slamming in the driveway cut through the tension. Blue and red lights painted the fence, casting eerie shadows across the patio. "That would be the cavalry," I said, checking my phone. "Right on time." Grace bolted. She made it 3 steps toward the back gate before her heel caught in the grass, sending her stumbling. She kicked off her shoes and kept running, but the yellow dress made her an easy target against the darkening sky. 2 officers appeared through the side gate, their radios crackling with static. Detective Chin followed behind them, her expression professional but not unsympathetic. "Ms. Rodriguez?" She approached me with measured steps. "We received your information. Are these the individuals in question?" "Taylor Morrison," I said, pointing. "Grace Martinez is the one running toward the back fence." One officer moved to intercept Grace while the other approached Taylor. "Sir, we need to ask you some questions." "This is insane," Taylor protested. "You can't arrest me at my own celebration." "We're not arresting anyone yet," Detective Chin clarified. "We're investigating allegations of financial fraud. You're welcome to cooperate, or you can call a lawyer." Taylor's colleagues had begun a strategic retreat, mumbling excuses about early mornings and babysitters. Michelle and her husband huddled together, whispering urgently. Eleanor still stared at the bill in her hands. The officer at the back fence was escorting Grace back to the patio, her bare feet leaving grass stains on her yellow dress. Her composure had completely evaporated. Her hair had come loose from its perfect style and mascara streaked her cheeks. "I want to call my lawyer," Grace announced. "That's your right," Detective Chin replied. "But we'd like to ask both of you some questions first." As the officers began separating Taylor and Grace for questioning, I found myself oddly detached from the chaos. The panic, the accusations, the desperate attempts to shift blame, it all felt like background noise. I walked back into the house, suddenly aware that I was starving. The kitchen felt peaceful after the turmoil outside. I made myself a plate, chicken, potato salad, a generous helping of the coleslaw I'd spent an hour perfecting. Through the window, I could see Taylor gesticulating wildly at Detective Chun while Grace sat rigidly in a patio chair, her lawyer already on the phone. Eleanor was crying quietly while Michelle tried to comfort her. I took a bite of the chicken. It was perfectly seasoned, tender and juicy. All that careful preparation hadn't been wasted after all. For the first time in 3 years, I ate without worrying about anyone else's needs. I didn't jump up to refill drinks or clear plates. I didn't monitor Eleanor's medication schedule or deflect uncomfortable questions. I just sat at my kitchen island, watched the circus outside through my window and enjoyed my meal. The taste of freedom, I discovered, was surprisingly satisfying. By morning, my phone had 37 missed calls and over 200 text messages. I turned off all notifications and made myself coffee in the blessed quiet of my kitchen. Outside, the media circus was just beginning, though I didn't know it yet. The first call I actually answered was from Marcus, my private investigator. "Alex, you need to see the news." I turned on the television to find my own face staring back at me from Channel 7's morning show. The headline read, "Local woman exposes cheating husband at family barbecue." They were showing clips. Someone had filmed the entire confrontation and uploaded it to social media. "I didn't release that footage," I told Marcus. "I know. Someone at the party did. It's everywhere. Twitter, TikTok, YouTube. You're trending." By noon the video had 3 million views. The comments section was split between people calling me a hero and others questioning my methods. I read them with detached curiosity, like studying reviews of a movie I'd never seen. The doorbell rang constantly. Reporters, I assumed, though I never answered. I watched from my bedroom window as news vans lined the street. Neighbors I'd barely spoken to in 3 years were giving interviews on my front lawn. Mrs. Peterson from next door told Channel 4, "She was always so quiet. Such a dedicated caregiver." I had no idea what was really going on. Quiet. The word followed me everywhere now. Grace's business began disintegrating within hours. David Martinez, her business partner, released a statement distancing the company from her actions. By Wednesday, 3 major clients had terminated their contracts. By Friday, the company's stock had dropped 60%. I found a perverse satisfaction in watching the financial reports. Grace had built her empire on the premise that she was untouchable, too smart to be caught. Now analysts on business shows were dissecting her downfall with the same clinical precision she'd once applied to other people's failures. She tried to control the narrative through a carefully orchestrated media campaign. Her lawyer arranged interviews where Grace positioned herself as Taylor's victim, claiming he'd manipulated her into the financial crimes. "I was coerced," she told a sympathetic reporter. "He threatened to expose our relationship unless I helped him access client funds. I was afraid for my career, my reputation." Taylor's response came 12 hours later through his own legal team. His statement painted Grace as the mastermind, claiming she'd seduced him into helping her steal money. I watched both interviews from my couch, eating takeout Chinese food and marveling at their shamelessness. They were still performing for each other even now. Still trying to be the smartest person in the room. My phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. Usually I let them go to voicemail, but something made me answer this one. "Is this Alex Rodriguez?" "Who's asking?" "My name is Carmen Valdez. I'm a nurse at Sunset Manor. I work with Eleanor Morrison." My stomach tightened. "Is she okay?" "She's fine physically. But I wanted to call because, well, I saw the video. I've been working with the Morrison family for 6 months now, and I wanted you to know, I never liked how they treated you." The unexpected kindness in her voice made my throat close up. "Thank you for saying that. You deserved better. What you did for that woman, the care you provided, it was professional-level work. They should have been grateful." After hanging up, I sat in my kitchen and cried for the first time since everything began. Not from sadness but from relief. Someone had seen my sacrifice. Someone had witnessed my dedication and recognized its value. That afternoon I called my lawyer and added a clause to the divorce proceedings. Half of my settlement would go to the National Caregiving Support Foundation. The irony wasn't lost on me. Taylor's infidelity money would fund resources for people like I'd been. The house sold faster than expected. A young couple with dreams and matching coffee mugs, the kind of people Taylor and I used to be. I signed the papers without sentimentality. Every room held memories I didn't want to keep. My new apartment was 1,200 square feet of possibility. No guest room for elderly relatives. No office space for a husband who worked late. Just me and the sound of waves against the rocks below my balcony. I bought plants. Herbs for cooking, flowers for beauty. I filled a bookshelf with novels I'd abandoned mid-chapter 3 years ago. I set up an easel in the corner by the window, something I hadn't done since college. The drawing started as therapy. Simple sketches of the view from my balcony, studies of light on water. I wasn't trying to create art. I was just trying to remember who I'd been before I became someone's caregiver, someone's betrayed girlfriend, someone's revenge story. 3 weeks into my new life, my college roommate Sarah called. "I shared one of your sketches on Instagram," she said without preamble. The one you posted of the lighthouse at sunset. Sarah, I didn't post anything. You sent it to me in a text. Remember? I asked how you were doing and you sent that beautiful drawing with a note about finding peace. I vaguely remembered the text sent late one night when insomnia had driven me to my easel. Anyway, Sarah continued, this gallery owner in Portland saw it and wants to talk to you. Her name is Elena Restrepo. She runs this amazing space downtown. The email arrived that evening, subject line, your work speaks volumes. Elena's message was brief but warm. She'd seen my lighthouse sketch and wanted to discuss including it in an upcoming exhibition called Emergence, Art from Life Transitions. She wasn't offering money or fame, just the chance to be seen as an artist again. I stared at the email for a long time. When was the last time someone had wanted something from me that wasn't about caregiving or sacrifice or making other people's lives easier? I couldn't remember. I crafted my response carefully, professionally, trying to sound like someone who belonged in the art world despite my 3-year absence. But as I typed, I realized I didn't need to pretend. My hiatus from art wasn't a gap in my resume. It was part of my story. The woman who'd drawn that lighthouse wasn't the same person who'd given up her architecture dreams to care for Eleanor Morrison. She was someone who'd learned about dedication, about seeing value in overlooked work, about finding beauty in the spaces between heartbreak and healing. For the first time in years, someone was seeing me not as Taylor's girlfriend or Eleanor's caregiver or Grace's unwitting victim. They were seeing me as Alex, the artist. And that recognition felt like coming home to myself. The gallery opening was on a Thursday evening in October, 6 months after the barbecue that changed everything. I stood in front of my lighthouse sketch, now professionally framed and lit with museum-quality spotlights, watching strangers examine my work with genuine interest. The artist captures something raw here. I overheard a woman in a burgundy coat tell her companion. There's pain but also liberation. Liberation. Yes, that was exactly right. Elena approached with a champagne flute and a smile that reached her eyes. 3 people have asked about purchasing prints. I told them they'd have to speak with you directly. People want to buy my art? The concept still felt surreal. Your art tells a story people recognize, Elena said. Resilience. Transformation. The courage to start over. A young woman approached us, notebook in hand. She introduced herself as a journalist from the Arts Weekly, wanting to interview me about the piece. What inspired this work? She asked, pen poised. I could have given the safe answer. Something about coastal living and natural beauty. That I told the truth. I drew this after leaving a relationship where I'd lost myself. The lighthouse represents finding your way back to who you really are. She scribbled notes enthusiastically. There's been buzz about you online. Some people recognize you from that viral video earlier this year. My stomach tightened slightly, but I kept my voice steady. That was a different chapter of my life. Do you ever regret how you handled that situation? I considered the question seriously. I regret staying silent for so long. I regret not valuing myself sooner. But the way it ended? Well, sometimes the truth needs witnesses. After the interview, I stepped outside for air. The Portland evening was crisp, carrying the scent of rain and coffee from the cafe next door. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Saw the article preview online. You're going to be famous. Famous felt overwhelming, but recognized felt wonderful. A month later, I received an unexpected letter in my mailbox. The return address made me pause. It was from Michelle, Taylor's sister. I almost threw it away unopened, but curiosity won. The letter was handwritten on expensive stationery. *Alex. I know I have no right to contact you, but I wanted you to know. You were right about everything. We treated you terribly and I'm ashamed of how I acted. Taylor's in therapy now, court-ordered. He asks about you sometimes. I tell him he lost the best thing that ever happened to him. Mom has good days and bad days. She asks for Taylor's friend who made the good soup, but can't remember why you're not around anymore. Maybe that's a mercy. I hope you're happy wherever you are. Michelle Asterisk. I read it twice, then filed it away. Not because I was holding grudges, but because some chapters needed to stay closed. The real surprise came 3 weeks later. Carmen, Eleanor's nurse, called again. I probably shouldn't be telling you this, she said, but Eleanor had one of her clear moments yesterday. She asked me to find your phone number. What did she want? She said she wanted to thank you. She remembered everything you did for her. The doctor visits, the medications, the way you made her feel safe. He cried, Alex. She said she was sorry for forgetting your kindness. That night I made Eleanor's favorite soup in my small kitchen. I couldn't deliver it to her, but making it felt like closure. Like forgiveness served warm in a ceramic bowl. My art continued to find audiences. A cafe in Seattle wanted to display my coastal series. A magazine featured my work in an article about artists of resilience. Each recognition felt like reclaiming a piece of myself I'd thought was lost. One evening, while organizing my studio space, I found the black envelope I'd kept as a memento. The one that had contained all the evidence, all the proof of betrayal and fraud. It sat in my desk drawer like a trophy I no longer needed to display. I took it to the balcony and let the ocean wind carry away its contents page by page. The financial documents, the photographs, the transcripts, all of it scattered into the salt air. I kept only one thing, Grace's card that had come with the perfume. Thanks for supporting Taylor's grind. The irony was too perfect to discard. 6 months after the gallery opening, I received an email that made me laugh out loud. A production company wanted to option my story for a television series. Revenge drama meets women's empowerment, the producer wrote. Very trending right now. I declined politely. My story wasn't entertainment. It was transformation. And transformation couldn't be packaged for mass consumption. Instead, I started teaching art classes at the community center. My students were mostly women over 50, many dealing with life transitions of their own. Divorce, empty nests, career changes, deaths of spouses. We painted together twice a week, sharing stories and silence in equal measure. I haven't held a brush in 30 years, said Margaret, a recent widow learning to live alone. It's never too late to start again, I told her and meant it. On the anniversary of the barbecue, I didn't mark the date intentionally. I was too busy living to commemorate past destructions. I was painting a new series, not lighthouses this time but doors. Open doors, closed doors, doors that led to unknown rooms filled with light. That evening my phone rang. A known number, but I answered anyway. Alex. This is Detective Chen. My breath caught. Is everything okay? I wanted to update you on the case. Taylor accepted a plea deal, 3 years with the possibility of early release for good behavior. Grace got 5 years, no early release. She was the mastermind after all. Justice felt quieter than I'd expected. Not triumphant, just complete. Thank you for letting me know. Alex. For what it's worth, you did the right thing. People like that count on others staying silent. After hanging up, I walked to my easel and picked up my brush. The canvas was blank, waiting for whatever came next. I no longer painted from anger or pain or the need to prove anything. I painted from joy. They had called me temporary, disposable, forgettable. But temporary things don't leave lasting marks. Disposable things don't create beauty that outlasts their creators. Forgettable things don't inspire recognition in strangers' eyes. I was never temporary. I was permanent. A woman who endured, who transformed, who emerged from darkness carrying light. And every time I signed my name on a new piece of art, I smiled. Because sometimes the woman they underestimate is the one who gets the last word. And sometimes that word is simply, Alex. If this story of calculated revenge had you on the edge of your seat, hit that like button right now. My favorite part was when Alex handed Taylor that black envelope at his own celebration, knowing exactly what was inside. What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more thrilling stories like this. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.